Check it out. Wasn't even running with the audio. NWM Marv. Hey, Marv. Marv says, hi, Dave. Trying to get this stuff typed out really fast. Things seem to be lagging today, which is interesting. Come on now. Okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to mess with this anymore. I was trying to get the music to play and just having nothing. Oh, well, maybe now it's finally going to actually work for me there. Sorry, I'm out of camera. Okay, let's... Uh-oh. Let's take that one. Yeah, things are definitely lagging today really bad on the internet. You know, I'm a Spectrum customer and supposedly have, you know, whatever this blazing fast speed, which, I mean, only shows up at probably 2 a.m. or something like that, 3 a.m. when nobody else is online. All right, here we go. Unfortunately, Spectrum in my area is the only game in town. Switch audio channels there. There we go. All right, cool. All right, so back to it. Last Saturday, our local woodturning club, the Northwest Michigan Woodturners, had their club meeting. And I was the demonstrator, and I went over the skew. My demo was on the skew. And it was very well received. It was, I personally thought it was a pretty good demo, although there were a few things that I wanted to, a couple of things that I wanted to expand upon, but time constraints couldn't do it. Turns out, however, that only the first, I think, 38 seconds of it was recorded. So the club asked me if I had a video in my library that covers all that. And, well, I have that information in my library spaced out among different things and different videos where I've used the skew. But I did say I would go ahead and do my best to duplicate the demo that I did Saturday, record that. So today, we're going over the skew, but we're going over the skew in depth. All right? I've switched my cameras, so I might need to adjust this one probably. Let's see. Let's bring this tailstock up a bit. Okay, yeah, I think that might be. Stick my hand in there. There we go. I think that's probably about right. All right, so we'll turn that off for a sec. So I've got one lone fly buzzing around here, and it keeps buzzing my bald head. There it is. No, go on. All right, so I thought we should go ahead and start with some visual aids. So let's take a look at the overhead projector. Just kidding. I don't have a budget for that yet. Let's look at this. All right, so a typical skew profile. And actually, let me. Well, no, I got these. Well, okay, let's look at skews first. Let's do that very first. So this is what most people think of. If I can get this in the camera frame, Dave. There we go. This is what most people think of when they think of a skew. It is a piece of bar stock that has an angle on the front, and then it's got a sharp edge. And basically, it's a knife edge. That's exactly what it is. It's a knife edge. It's really no different than this guy, which happens to be one of my favorite woodworking tools, pocket knife. It's really no different. So that's a standard, I don't know, I guess I'll call it a standard skew. They come from wherever, typically, well, okay. I guess you can get them radiused already now. So anyway, this is the first thing that people think of when they think of a skew, is that straight edge, and it's got an angle to it, piece of bar stock. This, as we get this in the camera, and now I'm out of the camera. We got that in the camera. Okay, so this guy right here, if you can see it well enough, is called a radius skew. It's the edge itself has got a curve to it. So those are typically the two main flavors of skew out there. Now I'm not counting the skew gouge, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm not counting that because in my opinion it's kind of a hybrid tool and not really a skew. It's just not specifically a skew. There is a third flavor that Richard Raffin has, and he's developed it. Now this is this is my negative rake scraper, but it has the same profile as Richard Raffin's skew. It's rounded on the end. It has the same angle profile that you see here, or whatever angle you decide to put on it. I can get my hand back there. I got stuff in the background that you can't see that, really. Go away, fly. This does not, like I said, this is my negative rake scraper. That used to be a flat nose scraper. But anyway, it's got the same profile. And as you can see, this edge, let's see if I can get the light to shine up on it. You probably can see without the light, but let's see if I can get her to shine. There we go, I think. Yeah. So this edge right here goes all the way around down to here. See if I can get that to shine up for you. There we go. So there's that edge. It goes back around this way over to here. So that is Richard Raffin's signature skew. This is not it, but that's what it looks like. And that is basically the three flavors of skew that you'll find out there, as far as I'm aware. This doggone fly is going to drive me nuts. So, we know that much. Let's take a look at the typical skew profile. So typical skew profile, like the straight, it's a straight skew. It's got the angled edge. This is the bevel. It's got the long point is called the toe, and the short point is called the heel. And the handle's in that direction. And I have had questions, what angle should this be at? And in my opinion, that's not super critical. What you want to have on your skew, does this show up? Let's switch cameras again. Alright, so what you want to have on your skew is a long point and a short point. That angle really doesn't matter that much. It's more, in my opinion, more a personal preference, right? But if you get it too blunt, it makes it very, very difficult to use as a skew. And if you get it too sharp, it gets way too aggressive. And if you have the points, let's say you have an angle like that, That is a lot of not much of the tool making contact. It's very, very, very aggressive. So somewhere, gosh, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and say 30 degrees. I mean, you got to find one. Again, it's personal preference. Find that angle that works for you. I don't know what this angle is. It doesn't matter. I just know that it works for me. What's important is this angle. This one and this one. So we'll go back to the overhead projector. And we'll talk about audio is distorting static. Maybe I have, hold on a second, thank you. It's possible that I have I overdrove it because my meter wasn't responding appropriately, or so I thought. So please let me know if that fixes it. I took it back down to its normal, typical max. What I did here was I swapped cameras. So the one that you're looking at me now on was a very group. Well, was it that one or this one? I'm pretty sure this one was a very nice gift to the channel and to me from my friends TC Schmo and Wiley Smiley Kylie. But I'm trying it's got a little bit of a wider angle, and I'm hoping that the audio picks up a little bit better. So I had it on overdrive. I've turned that off. Hopefully that resolves the issue. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you. Alright, so this is skew angle, the side view. We'd be looking at it like this. And again, it's kind of preference. Typically they're 20 to 25 degree angle on a skew. Some have them a little bit blunter, some have them a little bit, some people have them a little bit sharper. I wouldn't go over 20 myself because I think that it weakens that edge, and also it gets a whole lot more super aggressive with that really, really tight angle. Or rather, less than 20. But this is just my opinion. So this angle on this side is typically 20 to 25 degrees. And together, inclusive, it's 40 to 50 degrees across both. Now, the angle I use is close to 25. It's not dead on. It's really close, though, but it's in that neighborhood that I like to use my skew with. And I think it is a very nice angle to maintain when I do my occasional honing. I do want to remind people that this edge of the skew, or this bevel, this guy right here, that bevel is concave. That bevel is concave because you've sharpened it on a round wheel. So when you are honing, you'll see the material next to the edge come off a little bit, and the material right here on the top of the bevel will come off a little bit, and you won't be touching that. So if you're honing, don't grind it all the way down to, you're just wasting material. It is a concave grind, and that is, again, part of the gig with sharpening things on a grinder. So don't wear that all the way. You're wasting your time. It doesn't matter. When you're turning with the skew, you're not turning on the bevel. This is a subject I talk about a lot. Sorry, I'm going to grab my live center here. You're not really riding the bevel. I've heard the term floating the bevel. That's a little more accurate. I'm not really sure. The best way I can explain it is when you have your tool, whatever tool it is, we're talking about skew today, but whatever tool it is, when you have it set to cut, you're contacting the cutting edge and not the bevel. The bevel tells you where the tool wants to travel. It's there to remind you where the tool wants to travel. So if you, depending on where you have that bevel pointed, that's where the tool is more naturally going to want to cut. But that does not mean that this is super critical. It does typically, like I say, they're between 20 to 25 degrees. I think I've seen some at 30. You don't want to get too blunt, like close to 45 and all that, because then it becomes more difficult to use it as a skew. You'll have a very, very, very small bevel angle there. It'll be really, really blunt, and you won't be able to get very deep into your material. Let's put away the overhead projector. I thought that was funny. Hi, Slamey. Okay, let's see. What else do we need to talk about with the skew? Let me hone this guy a little bit and have a little cogitation in my brain, because there was just a subject I wanted to talk about. And I cannot remember what I was going to say. So that's all right. Maybe we'll get back to it. I just want to hone this a little bit, because it is, you'll have a much nicer experience with the skew, with it sharp, no burr. If there's a burr on your skew, it's not going to cut well. It will make a really nice negative rake scraper, however. So let's talk, and then we're going to shortly talk about all the groovy things, because I think a skew is a pretty versatile tool. For what it's designed for, which is spindle work, it is amazing. I think it is, at least to me, a fairly indispensable tool. I could do without it. I can use other tools in a similar fashion, except for, cutting those lines. The skew with V cuts is unparalleled. So, actually, I might need to bring the, no I don't need to bring that back. We were talking about the skew and the angle. Let's get this guy up here. So let's talk a little bit about this tool and its intimidation factor. It is considered an intimidating tool. You have this long knife edge sticking out there in the world, and for those who have had troubles with the skew, these 2 points are working all the time to touch each other and touch the wood at the same time. You don't want them to do that. When you're working with the skew, this is the heel here, the short point. If I'm working on this side of the tool using the short point, I'm usually not going to go more than, I've gone as far as tooth, actually I've gone as far as about 80% of the edge of this thing peeling off timber. But I will usually go no more than half of that distance. And I'm going to swap that so I can see what the heck I'm doing better. Whoops, don't lose that. So I'm cutting from the halfway point down to whichever point I'm using. If it's the long point, it's a halfway point to down. And I will say, and going back to intimidating, so it's an intimidating looking tool, and it's very sharp. I know that because I just cut myself today on one while I was sharpening it. And our minds want to make it, they make it look more intimidating. Our brains do, because it looks so unlike the rest of the tools out there. And it really doesn't need to be all that intimidating to you. I think, I know that I had a rough go in the beginning with the skew because I was following along with some YouTube stuff when I first started. I didn't have any instruction with it. I didn't have anybody tell me what I couldn't do. So early on, I was actually turning spheres with my skew. I had taken a class with, now I remember his name for some reason is Gil Gerard, but it's Dick Gerard, I am reminded, who came to, well, for one, show us how to turn spheres between cup centers, where you start off with a square block, and you get it between centers, make it round, rotate it, or mark it, rotate it 90 degrees, turn that part round, mark it, rotate it a different 90 degrees, and make that round, and keep working it around and around like that. And while I was taking the class, I was using the skew. I was actually using this skew, in fact. And the reason for that was that I found, after bumping around and having issues with the straight skew, that a radius skew is a little bit more forgiving in where you're making curves. I'll just call them quarter beads. A bowl profile is a quarter of a bead. If you look, well, the outside of the bowl is an entire half a bead. All right, you can make three. Basically, you can. I mean, if you really cut it down, you can only make two shapes: a straight line and a curve. That's it. You can't make a square. You can make a straight edge and a curve, and you break that down into V cuts, which are straight lines, and then beads, which are convex lines, and coves, which are concave. So those are basically the three shapes that you can turn with any tool. Is a cove, a bead, and a straight line. The skew can do all of those, and excels at the straight line part, and I think it's very, very well designed for the job that it has. There's a lot of things that can be done with the skew that most people aren't aware of, but I did want to make sure that those of you who haven't had a whole lot of luck with a skew or just considering picking one up, in my opinion, I had a lot better experience starting off with a radius skew. It made it so much easier for me to get around the curves, to make those coves, the beads, than a straight skew. And after a while, I started picking up a straight skew and working with that. So if you're having trouble with a straight skew, try radius skew. I think that might help you out. Now, when I got my skew, it was a straight line, and I was having issues getting good cuts. I was having issues because both points I didn't realize at the time, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. Go away, fly. That both points should not touch the material that you're working with at the same time. It should only be one point at a time. If you get 2 points, it's a catch. And then you can really get some gouges out. It can be a bad catch where you just tear chunks out, and possibly, even with the spindle turning, the thing can come off the lathe. Fortunately, at least in my experience with spindle turnings, that don't tend to fly up and over or into your chest. They tend to just fall down. And I was thinking to myself, because I didn't know radius skews were a thing at the time, I was thinking, because I've always thought swords are kind of cool, right? So there are some swords that are curved and some are straight, but the ones that are curved tend to cut better because the weight and the mass of the blade is going down a curved edge, so it's distributed a little bit more evenly than with the straight edge. that where it cuts is where almost all the stress is. So I figured, well, let me put a curved edge on it and see how that does. And that's where I started using a radius skew much more often than the straight edge. There is now this particular skew. This is a Thompson tool skew. The bottom of the skew is actually radius. It's round, and I like that feature. The top is just flat. I think you can see this okay. Let me take a look at the camera while I catch up with the lag. Let's put this guy down. Alright, so the top is flat and the bottom is radiused. I really like that when I'm doing beads with the short point, because it's much easier for the tool to pick itself up and set itself into what I call my end cut, the last position I want to be in. I really like that. But I also used to turn the tool with my hand, my supporting hand. So let's turn this guy on. I think this will be, that looks pretty close to being in the center of the screen. Let me raise this up just a touch. Go away, fly. Sorry, I'm fiddling with the camera here. There we go, that's a little bit better. So when I would turn beads, I would turn the tool with my support hand. And with the skew, I mean, you can do it that way. I did it that way. That's not the most efficient way to use the tool. And it adds more mechanical movement to the whole process, so it makes it a little bit more complicated. Using the skew is actually fairly easy once you get the mechanics of it down. Let's throw these guys on. And so this one is just a regular flat bar. All four sides are square. There are skews that are oval in shape. And I do like the radiused top and bottom, but I don't like the radiused sides because you can't, it wants to float more on the tool rest than like if you want to have this lay flat. I don't always have it lay flat either, but I never really got into the oval skews because they just didn't seem to do things properly, if that makes any sense. Things didn't line up right. Go away, fly. But you know, other people use them. That's just me. I prefer the flat sides. I'm going to now move this camera down. Try to get that in the center. So I got both cameras going because I want you to see. TC Smo says better. Cool. I'm assuming that means the need a fly stick, right? And Marv says need a fly stick. TC Smo says the audio is better, so that's really cool. And I'm also hoping it's better with the camera down because the other mic on the other camera seemed to be kind of omnidirectional. And I'm kind of hoping with the way that this particular camera is that the mic will work better. So that's why I kind of switched them. All right, so I've got it so you can see what's happening from overhead, and you can see how the handle moves and how my body moves from the side. I think I can get everything in the frame. So there are several different cuts you can make with a skew. One of them is called a peeling cut. And what that allows you to do is take, not necessarily square, doesn't have to be square. This just happens to be a square piece of timber, making it round, just like, and it works just like the veneer factories. They do the same thing. They've got a long knife that they run the log up against and spin the log, and it peels off those layers as it goes through the ring system. This is the same thing. And there's two ways to do this. I've got this on slow. Let's speed it up a little bit. That's about right. Hopefully that doesn't wash things out too much. So I'm going to show you two ways to make a peeling cut. I'm going to show you what I feel is the most complicated way, and then a much easier way, in my opinion. I want to make sure that I'm at the right height. Right now, I'm just a tad bit below center. I think I want to go no lower than center for this cut. And usually with a skew, you don't want to go below center, period. Once you start going below center, you start getting more in danger of this point touching at the same time. If you're using the long point, that's not as dramatic, but still, that's pointing. Dude is pointing up there. Both of them are pointing on the top. So whatever surface you're going around, they're wanting to dig in if you allow it. You don't want both points to touch the material you're working with. You don't want both points to touch each other. That's how I look at it. It's like they're always trying to touch each other, and when they do, it's disaster. So I want to keep them as separate, as far apart from each other as I possibly can. So I've got this right now right at, well, nope, right at center. When I'm turning, and it depends on the diameter of the material that I'm working with. I have not used a skew on anything larger than 6 inches in diameter, I think. If I had a longer tool rest post, I might give it a shot if it was wider. But you've got to get your skew up to a position where when you're making a cut, your other point is not coming, not trying to get dangerously close to the wood that you're turning. And the larger the diameter, the more difficult it is to use a skew down low. You've got to bring it up more and more to the top. In most cases, when you're doing stuff like that, you're making planing cuts anyway, so you really want to have your tool well above center, at least the cutting edge well above center, so that it's not trying to dig into the wood at a crazy angle. And with the skew, it's just like every other tool except for this cut, which is a peeling cut. When you are using a skew, the angle that you want the cutting edge at is somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 degrees. I say somewhere because it depends on the timber. Some timbers, you're going to have that angle up closer to 30, 40 degrees, and in some timbers it'll be wider than 45. 45 is a good place to start. It lets you, and you can, with your body language, you can move the tool as you see me doing here with just my hip. My hand is not even touching it. I can change this angle just by moving my hip. So I'll start, and when I start on a skew, I want to start, as I've said before, I want to start on this part of the bevel right here. Once that bevel is making contact, then I know I have my anchor set on all sides. I can get my bevel going in the right direction that I want to do, and then I can do the C part, which is cut. I can slightly rotate the cutting edge into action. I'm off the bevel at that point and only on the cutting edge, which is actually a lot easier with a concave surface that you get off a wheel. It's a lot easier to be able to do that than with just a straight angle like you would get off a grinding stone or what have you. So a peeling cut, this is the most complicated part, or most complicated way in my opinion. A peeling cut, you want to start down low again. You want to get that bevel rubbing. You're going to lift the handle until the timber starts coming over the edge, and you'll lift that handle until it starts coming off real clean. When it starts coming off real clean, then you have to continue to lift the handle and follow that cutting edge down onto the diameter that it's creating. So it is a much more complicated movement of having to follow the cut down in, and make a peeling cut, and it looks like this. So I'm rubbing the bevel right there. I've got my anchor. My anchor's right there. I'm only going to move the tool up and down. I'm not going side to side. And in this case, I'm using probably about 2/3 of the cutting edge. I could use the whole thing if I wanted, but I just want to show you how this looks first. I'm starting to get a cut there. Now it's starting to come out clean. Now I have to move forward, raise the handle, and follow that cut down in. Drop the handle, get that cut started, raise the handle to follow the cut in. That is a very, very good way to do peeling cuts, to make things round, or even just to remove material. This hand, in almost all cases, is just there to put weight on the tool. Put weight on the tool to keep it in positive contact with the tool rest. I'm not trying to, and I'll show you how I used to do that. I think I still remember how, but I'm not trying to do a lot of complicated things. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, use my body mechanics, the ergonomic movements that I want to incorporate into this, so I'm not beating myself up, and I'm not beating the tool up, I'm not beating the material up. Nobody's getting beat up. It's not fun. I like turning to be fun. So again, I'm just going to raise the handle. It's sliding up and down my body right here. I've got to follow that cut down in. Drop the handle, come out. Follow that cut down in as I'm raising the handle. Drop the handle again, come out. So there's a lot of movements. And when you do it fast, when you get practice, it looks like this. For me, that's a lot of movement. That isn't necessarily necessary. The way I like to do it, everything is pretty much set the same way, except instead of being on the side of my hip, my handle, at least this handle anyway, because of the length of it, is right in my hip socket right there. With that dude on the screen. Yeah, okay, now we can see it. So it's right in my hip socket right there. And what I'm going to do, instead of using my arms and doing all this stuff, I'm just going to move my body forward. That's all I'm going to do. Once I find where it's making that cut, right there, I can just back out, move my hip forward, and push it straight into the material. It's quieter, it's a smoother cut, and it's not complicated. So as you can see on this particular piece, I've got much wider than a 45-degree angle to get a nice cut on. So as I'm holding this, as you can see from the side, my fingers are touching the bottom of the tool rest. I'm not touching this. I'm not trying to get my fingers in between anything. It's underneath. I'm giving the tool my hand weight via my thumb just to keep it on the tool rest. And then on longer pieces like this, I might bring my hand in to give a little bit support where I'm feeling vibration. And I'm not pushing my hand into it, because what happens is friction starts to build up, and friction burns suck. I'm just allowing the wood just to go right by. There is a minimal amount of heat, but I'm not trying to push against the wood. I'm just putting my hand up against it. I can hold my hand there probably all afternoon. It's barely making any contact. contact is stronger down on the tool rest. So when I'm doing longer runs and I don't have a spindle steady or whatever, I will do it this way. And I can just keep moving my tool rest down until I get to either the tailstock or the headstock where there's less vibration. I do have to worry about vibration here a little bit because we are looking at a 5/8 round, not quite 3/4 round piece of material that is about 6 inches long. There's going to be some flex right there, right in the middle. Everything's pushing in. And that's something else I should mention too when you're working with a skew. You don't need a bunch of inward pressure. You just need enough pressure to keep it between the centers. Working with a skew, just like every other tool, I'm going to bring this guy back up. Working with a skew, like every other tool, is finesse. Most of wood turning is finesse. It takes practice to get there, but once you do, you'll see that things will change. Things will change for you. Once you get the ABCs down, the tool handling skills, you practice, you'll start to see that things just work a little bit better. With the skew, there are several ways to work with a skew. I started off learning to become ambidextrous with all of my tools, and the skew as well. And some turners turn from the same side of the lathe with their skew and just alter their body position, and I'm going to show you that. But first I'm going to show you the ambidextrous method that I used to use, and I still actually sometimes do. So let's go down here, and I think, oh yeah, I'm going to leave this camera on here, and we'll bring this guy back up to about the middle, I think. In theory, there we go. All right, so glasses down. With my anchor, my bevel, I want my cutting edge at basically 45 degrees to start. I want my bevel rubbing while this is on. It's rubbing, there's no cut, no cut, no cut. I've got to rotate the cutting edge right there, right into the cutting position, and now I'm off the bevel. I'm only using the cutting edge. And I can take this hand away and still make the cut because I'm using my whole body. My whole body is shifting to the side. But ambidextrous, I would have this hand on top to keep the tool on. It's not doing anything other than that, and then swap the tool to the other side. I really didn't, all I had to do was kind of shift my center of gravity, and now I can go this direction. That's how I started working with it, and I think I got, as a kid, I got kind of weird because I broke my right arm in a bicycling accident, long story. Anyway, I got run over by a car as a kid, broke my right elbow. So I had to do everything, and I was primarily right-handed, and I had to learn to use my left hand to write, to do a bunch of things. And then ever since then, I've always worked to try to keep, this is still my dominant hand, but I do a lot more now with my left than I used to, even as a kid. I've always worked at that. So that was one of the impetus things on learning to turn my tool with either hand. The other one is that it depends on the position of the lathe that you're in and where you can get the tool handle in the first place. Sometimes when you're up at headstock, you can't get over far enough because your tool handle, the headstock, gets in the way. Same thing with the tailstock, although not as often because the tailstock's got much smaller diameter. Come on, Dave. Drive center. Sorry, let me rephrase that. The drive center is not much smaller. It's just got a longer, smaller area that is covered up by the drive center and the tailstock than there is on the headstock and the drive center side. Headstock is much wider, taller, so in my case anyway, it's definitely taller than my tool rest, or my tool rest, my tailstock, thank you. I get more often in the way, the headstock gets more often in the way for me than the tailstock. So when I have something that I need to work on this side, I do everything I can to get it flopped around so I can work at it from here, because I've got a whole lot more area to work in here, almost 90 degrees, and here I've got less than that. I got less than that because I can only get my tool handle so far. With the skew, some of that is mitigated. Glasses down. So when I'm doing a long run towards a headstock, and most of the time when I'm working at the headstock, I'm going to use the long point. And the reason for that is that I can get closer in there and still be farther away than I would be right here with the short point. Short point, I'd be right here, somewhere in this neighborhood. With the long point, I'm away from the headstock a lot more, and I can get closer in this way. So I will use, again, turning from no more than halfway down to the point. And as you can see, the tool handle, this is using a short point. Tool handle is further back and lower down. With the long point, the tool handle is up, almost parallel, and more to the left. The cut is the same. There, I'm using the point to clean that out. So the cut is the same as with the short point. Just like it would be here, except here, now I'm a lot closer to... Now I'm starting to get in the way. The headstock is starting to get in my way. Out here, it's not going to happen. So it doesn't matter which point you use, as long as you are, at least as a beginner, and sometimes even the intermediate, because there's a lot of things that you can do with a skew. And I'll show, I'm trying to work from the simplest, the least advanced to the most advanced. That, at least in my opinion, the cuts that are most advanced and least advanced, from least to most. So hopefully cover the range from beginner all the way to a seasoned skew user who may not realize some of the things that you can do with a skew. So, long point, short point, doesn't matter. As long as you maintain the same rules, anchor, bevel. I got my bevel here wider than 45, but on this piece of poplar, that's where it wants to be turned. It wants to be turned at more than 45. If I go right to 45, it does all right. But if I open it up, I get a smoother cut with this piece of timber. So it wants to turn, as I said, it depends on the timber. It wants to turn whatever angle it wants to turn. That's what I'm going to give it, to the best of my ability. So that's the ambidextrous way. I'm just shifting center of gravity, going back and forth this way. I understand that there are quite a few tuners, production turners, stuff like that, who stay on one side of the skew. So they'll turn this way, maybe they'll use the long point too. But they'll turn all the way down here, and then when they need to go back there, instead of turning the whole tool around and changing their center of mass, they just stay on this side of the tool, get their anchor, the bevel ready to go, rotate that edge in, and do it the way I'm doing it now. I typically anchor my fingers to the tool rest, so my hand's not going to go anywhere. I give some support to this if it needs it, but most of the weight of my hand is on my thumb that's pushing. It's not pushing the tool, I'm just resting it there, but it's keeping it in positive contact with the tool rest. I'm using my body to move the tool. I'm not using my arms. So if I take this hand away, the cut is the same. Just like that. Nothing has changed. When you look at this long, sharp edge, you know, you might think of something like this. Long, sharp edge. This is, I mean, they're the same thing. This has got a concave grind. So if I set this up here and get it in the right position, that would be the wrong direction, Dave. Get it rubbing on the bevel. Now I'm cutting a little bit more than 45. It's no different. Now this has got a little bit wider bevel to land on, whereas this bevel, I mean, this is a concave grind, but the bevel is like about a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge. Here the bevel is quite a bit wider, so I can start off with that. It's a fairly clean cut. It's got a little bit of choppiness to it, but it's not no tear out. It's just a little bit of choppiness because keeping that really, really small bevel in line is a lot more difficult than using this. So I'm moving my whole body. Nothing is changing with my body position other than my hips, my ankles, and my knees. I could do this all day because I'm not using my smaller muscles. I'm using all the larger muscle groups in my body to make this cut. My elbow's tucked in. That's part of the anchor too. So I've got a 3-point anchor. I've got the tool rest, I've got my hip, and then I've got this right here, right up against my body. And it doesn't matter which hand I'm using, that's how it's going to be. I want to have that stability because I know that if I have to move my hand to another position while I'm making a cut, I can do it and not worry about it because it's the major muscle groups that are doing all the work. Takes practice, but you will get there. Same thing this way. If I was turning it this way, and I'll use the long point because I can get my handle up more parallel to the ground. I now have the handle right here, a little bit to the right and down from my belt, just above the belt line, basically. Get my anchor. Now it's a little bit higher. I had to get the cutting edge in the right area. It's cutting now. And now I'm just pushing my body. I'm leaning forward. The cut's going to happen because I've got the cutting edge in the right position. I can control how that happens by my body language, my body mechanics, and the grind on the tool. So that is basically, as far as I understand, you know, the two main ways that people turn with a skew. They'll stay on one side of the tool, or they'll go back and forth. With me, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. It just sometimes depends on where I'm at on the lathe. If I can't get the tool handle around, then maybe I'll switch hands, or maybe I'll switch points. With a, so now let's go, I think I've got past all that. Let's go ahead and talk about another cut. We're going to talk about a V cut, a straight cut. Well, you can make it straight. It's a V cut, but you can make it a straight cut. So as you recall, and I have said many times, this bevel right here is, wherever you want to make the cut, you've got to point your bevel in that direction. So if I have it here, and you can see the bevel's pointed there, it's going to want to try to cut and undercut in that direction. And that looks like this. You can't, I don't know if, I think you might be able to tell from this camera here, from the side view. that the tool actually did undercut in there. That's not what I'm trying to get. What I'm trying to get is a V-cut, so I have to point this direction. So that means I got to complete the cut on the other side. And I can keep working my way down. My bevel's pointed in, it's going that way. It's pointed in the direction of travel. I have to shift a little bit so that this bevel can point the opposite direction. I start off with the point and I raise the handle straight up. Start here with the point, raise the handle straight up, straight back down. With a straight cut, I'm going to work this wall, and whichever wall I want, we'll say this one right here on this side, I'll slowly start to move. Well, with this timber, I can just jump right to the direction I want to go now that I've got this gap. But if I didn't have that gap and I was working on a V-cut, I would slowly rotate whichever bevel against whichever side wall I want it to be straight. Slowly start to where it shifts to where it's finally straight. And that gives you a straight cut, straight shoulder. I can do the same thing here. I can do it from the other side. I can do it left-handed. Doesn't matter. What matters is where that bevel is pointing. Start up with the tip, raise the handle, follow it down. So that is a straight cut with the V-cut. The next cut I'm going to show you is going to be a cove. Now with the cove, as with the bead, you've got to start from one direction, work your way down to the middle. We'll say that's the middle. Work your way that way. That's number one. And then you start over here at number two, and you come over here and work your way to the middle, and slowly make a U shape or, convex curve. And that does require, well, no, it doesn't require. I can do it from one side of the tool. So we'll do it both ways. If I go this way, go right to the middle, just shift my gravity a little bit, take this side, take it down to meet it, and keep working back and forth until I get the depth in the middle that I want. Working to maintain that curve on both sides. If I do it from the other side and start here, I don't have my anchor. Work my way to the middle, come back over here, I'm anchored up already, work my way down, and I'm staying on the same side of the tool. The tool is always to my right. And again, doesn't matter which point I use, as long as I get it in the right orientation. I can use that one, come back over here, use it over here. Doesn't matter. One of the coolest things, so now I'm going to show you an advanced technique, or at least what I consider to be advanced, because it can be tricky if you are not paying attention. So it's very often said that you should not cut uphill to the fibers and that you can't cut back over with a skew. That's not true. You actually can make a cut going in a reverse direction with a skew, and you can go uphill to the fibers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this cove here, and I think we'll just do it from overhead so you can see how the, well, I don't know, I'm going to leave this camera on for a second just to see how that looks. Connor Malice says, I'm hearing an echo, but anyway, hi Dave. Hey, how's it going? I'm not sure if there's an echo for anyone else. I do know that I had the audio on overdrive to try to compensate for what I thought might be a maybe not as good a microphone on par with the other camera. I've swapped the cameras. This microphone seems to be a little bit better, so I took the overdrive off and the staticky stuff went away, I understand, or at least it's better. I don't know about a echo. Hopefully no one else is experiencing that, but hello, glad you could make it, man. Alright, so I'm working on my cove here. and I want to go back up the hill, I don't have to pull my tool away. I just have to shift where the cutting edge is. And you can see I'm still pulling shavings off. And I'm following that curve. I'm following the curve of the cove. I'm going back and forth. Do the same thing here. Go down, meet it in the middle, go back up. Let's widen that cove up a little bit. I'm not taking heavy cuts with this piece because it's a thin piece. But if I were to, let's do it anyway. It would be much bigger shavings. So this is, and I remind people not to do things they're not comfortable with. This is a more advanced cutting technique, in my opinion, because you do have to slightly adjust where the cutting edge is hitting the material. And here I can continue to widen this out if I want to, or I can just continue to work with the cove that I've got. So we had it down here. I use this technique to widen it out. So that's a cove. You normally will start from one side and work your way down and the other side and keep going back and forth, just like a V-cut to get to the depth that you want. So we're going to lose this guy. Well, no, I think I can still use this. Yeah. Alright, so another thing that I want to show you is another little cool technique that I use all the time with the skew. I want to turn a bead, right? So I'm going to turn it right here with a straight skew. That looks good. Sure, why not? Well, how about right there? So my hand just pulled the tool over as I was turning. This hand. That's not the most efficient way to do it. The more efficient way to do it is to go where your end cut is. You're planning ahead. You go to your end cut, you set yourself up for that cut. I'm in a neutral, ready position, comfortable. That's my end cut. Put my thumb on top, rotate my hand down and away to get that tool still anchored to my hip, to get that tool's cutting edge to the direction I want it to be. So there, I'm getting a cut right there. So I'll just rest my hand on there, and then this hand is going to come straight up. It looks like I'm rolling the tool, but I'm not. I'm allowing my wrist to relax and move to its neutral position. It'll do it automatically. Get the cut started. There it is. I'm lifting the tool straight up. It looks like it's curving, but it really is going straight up and down. Just like that. That is a much more efficient way to use the tool than trying to roll it with your hand, your hand that's supposed to support the tool. Because, well, one thing that you'll find out is that you can get skates. Now, skates are caused by a couple of things. One of them is you're contacting way too much of that cutting edge, especially down around a bead. So if I do that, and I get down too low, and I don't pull off the right way, see that spiral? That's a skate. If I come back around, let's clean that up. Again, just lifting my hand, this hand, straight up. Now if I make contact with that bottom point, not much is going to happen. If I make contact with the upper part of the tool, I just got to, there's another skate, there's another skate, there's another skate, there's another skate. I want to stay below the halfway point. A catch is when the opposite point catches in the wood, makes contact with the wood at the same time that the point you're using, or the half of the tool that you're using, is also making contact. And that looks like this. You hear that bump? tears, look at that tear out. So it's not like super dangerous or what have you, as far as like having the tool fly out of your hand. It's not typically like that, because everything's pretty flat already. The mass of the handle helps keep the tool down, and where your hand is on it also helps keep the tool down. But it really messes up the wood and sometimes can make it just come right off the lathe. When it's a spindle piece, it doesn't typically come right up at your face or right at your chest. It typically just wants to flop over. You know, I'm not saying that one is safer than the other. I'm just trying to let you know that even a catch with a skew is not as intimidating as it seems to be. So I can really hog this stuff off. I can make a deep cut, get some pretty decent shavings, or I can control the depth of my cut and get very, very tiny shavings and a very smooth surface. Well, I can get a smooth surface regardless. But I can just shave down parts of the material that I'm working with to inch down. You know, if I need to get a specific diameter, what have you, I take smaller and smaller cuts. Let's turn this guy into a bead just for fun. There we go. So here, let me grab another piece. I want to show you. Oh, this is a little bit longer even, so I gotta worry about. Oh my, that's cracked. Sure enough. Alright, I'm gonna cut that away. So not so long a piece. I don't want the points splitting that crack further open and having it come off the centers there. Yeah, that's much better. So I'm going to ballpark it. Not there. Not there. That looks close. Excuse me. And that looks pretty close. So I want it secure, but I don't want to have so much pressure on it that it's bowing in the middle. When you have a really much longer piece, smaller diameter, that gets harder and harder to do. But that's why there's the spindle steadies and stuff like that, or your hand pressure as you're going along making the planing cut. So we got to see a peeling cut, we got to see a straight cut, we got to see a cove. We're going to see a planing cut right now. Boy, that is not. Oh, it's close. All right. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing a peeling cut, I'm going to do a planing cut. And a planing cut is basically a standard cut with a skew. You get your anchor set, your bevel pointed in the right angle. You engage the cutting edge, and you go across the piece. There's no reason why you can't rough out a piece. With the planing cut, I'm going back and forth. Pulling shavings off both directions. This way, I have twice the productivity, I guess. I don't have to lift the tool up, move over, and start making another cut. I can continue the cut all the way back down. Pick it back up and bring it down this way. Again, this is an advanced technique, something that you definitely need to practice. But if you are not comfortable with the technique, don't do it. It's okay. Everybody has different skill levels. If it's not one you can master, that is all right. So that's a typical planing cut. I'm just planing off the surface by going one direction or the other, planing it off. So now we're round. Either way is fine, either peeling or a planing cut, doesn't matter. So we've done those cuts. Now we're going to do beads. And here is, yeah, this is what I want to show you. I want to show you this stuff. Alright, so the first cut I'm going to make is I'm going to do a quarter of a bead, right? Or, well, I guess half a bead, not a quarter of a bead. I'm thinking of a sphere, so I want to have my bead, say, right in here. So my tool handle's coming straight up. I wasn't quite in the right position, but I was close. Let's do that again. My hand comes straight up, and that's my end cut. So if you look at this, you see how chewed up that is? It's all fuzzed up. I don't like that. For one, it's a little bit of a hazard, occupational hazard, I suppose, with a straight skew. It's not as prevalent, in my opinion, with a radius skew. But the way I get around that is, I take the skew, do a straight cut, just breaking the surface of the fibers. Just breaking that surface. So I can do whatever I want over here, and that will stay clean. So I get myself set up. There's my end cut. I'm all relaxed. Now I got to get unrelaxed to get into here, and I can cut right down into that surface. And get that side of the bead. Now this is not all torn up. I have to clean up a little bit because I pushed against it, but a little bit of negative ray scraping takes that raised edge up, and it's not fuzzed like this. So it's much easier to work a bead, in my opinion, to do it this way. You want to score those fibers. I've broken the surface fibers, so whatever side I work on, the opposite side is going to stay clean, like in this case here. So I'm going to turn the other half of this bead in the same way. I'm going to try to do it this way. Just from the same side of the tool. There, I did all right. Cool. So this is raised up. It's not fuzzed up. It's just raised up a little bit. Clean that up just with a planing cut. Do the same thing. How you want to clean up that edge doesn't matter, but I don't have to worry about all this nonsense, all that chewed up stuff. When I'm using a straight skew, most of the time I'm going to score the surface at the spot that I want to create that bead. To keep it clean. Not the best beads, but I'm trying to rush through this. I should stop trying to rush. So that is a pretty good bead, not bad. So let's move down a little bit and let's do the radius skew. And hopefully this will demonstrate what I'm talking about, how it was a little bit easier to start working with a skew with a radius skew. Because the radius skew, for one, it's going to cut a little bit better, but on a rotating, a rounding edge, to me it seems to cut a little bit, it's a little bit more forgiving. So here is my end point. I'm not going to score it the first time. I'm going to get my skew, my anchor, my bevel set. Now I've got my cut started. You can see that right there. So I'm going to raise the handle and move my body and start that bead. Still fuzzed up. So let's clean that up. It's still fuzzed up. I want to leave that bit, so that's kind of chunked up right there. Let me score it. Here's where I think the biggest difference is. As soon as I start lifting the handle, that curve of the edge goes along the curve of the bead. And makes it a little bit easier to make that curve. So and let's do this. All right, so I've got this one here. I've got this bead right here. You see there's a little bit of a hump right in there. I think the light might be catching just right. I don't know if I can see it on the overhead. No, it's kind of washed out. So there's a little bit of a hump. Where's my pencil? There it is. So this is the center point. There's a little bit of a hump right there. You can pick up a cut with a skew the same way you would any other tool. You get your anchor and bevel set. You start the cut right behind that where you want to pick it up, and then just carry it down. So comfortable position, that's where I'm at. I want to start my cut just behind that hump, right there. Really, really tiny shavings. I don't know if you can see it. But I just pick up that cut and carry it down. Now that hump is gone. It doesn't matter where you are, in a cove, on a bead, making a straight cut. If you are having trouble with the cut, step away from the cut and start it over. A bad cut is only going to get worse as you go along. It's not going to get better. Don't be afraid to start over. So I want that to be a straight wall, so I've got my bevel pointed in the direction I wanted to travel, which is that way. Now I've got my straight wall again. That was with the short point. I'll score that, and I'll leave this one alone. So I'm going to turn this bead first. I'm going to use the long point. Now, you must keep this in mind. The long point is going to want to go deeper than the short point. You have to keep that in mind. It's an extended point. It's a little bit more aggressive. Well, shoot, that's not even the right way to say it. The way that it comes around the surface can make it act a little bit more aggressive. Tool control mitigates all of that. The coolest thing about using the long point to make a bead is that short point is a lot further away from the material than the long point would be if I was using the short point. So the long point, let's leave a marker right there, and short point. That's ½ an inch difference at least. Same thing, I want to start my cut. I want to get there's my comfortable spot. That's pretty comfortable for me. I want to start my cut. I want to raise the handle. The handles only come straight up my body. Allow my hand to relax and get into position. Same thing here, and you can see that's not fuzzed up. So scoring the surface, cutting the surface fibers cleanly leaves you a clean cut to work from. So here I am again. This is going to be my comfortable spot. Go back here, start my cut, raise the handle straight up my body. There we have a bead. Doesn't matter which point you use. So I'm going to shift over a little bit more, and I'm not going to score the surface using the long point. There's my end cut. We'll start it there. I got to pick up that cut again. There it was. Oh, nope, a little bit more. There we are. So you can see it's still fuzzed up. A lot more, actually. And that's because the point got in there quicker the long point got the long point got in there quicker and started fuzzing things up before we got around to the edge, whereas the short point doesn't quite do that. I go to this side, start the cut again. I know I'm going to end here. I didn't mean to score that, so I'm not going to hit that spot. Bring the handle straight up my body, and I moved over. I'm going to clean that bead up, so I'm going to pick up the cut here. Bring the handle straight back up. So depending on where you're at, if I'm turning a bead really close to, as I said, the tool, the headstock, all right, we'll go ahead and score that. So when I'm making this cut, I'm bumping into the headstock if I'm using a short point. My arm is. I can't get the full range of movement that I need. So I'm going to ship over to the long point. Now I'm a lot farther away at the start than I am here. Here I'm already touching the headstock. I get my cut started, bring my handle straight up. Now I'm touching the tailstock, but I'm at my end cut. I'm already at the end, so it doesn't matter. So where you are on the lathe can help dictate which point you use. Keep in mind that you should use, again, no more than half of the cutting surface from the point. So halfway into the tool down to the point is where you should be cutting at. So we'll move that guy away. I'm going to bring this guy in really quick because this was fun. I did this Saturday too. And then this time I'm going to do it with both tools, I think. That might be, I don't know, I just want to try it out and see how that looks or how it works. I'm sure it will be the same result both ways. Alright, so what I did, well, I'm just going to recreate what I did at the meeting. Anything new? TC Smo says, no echo here. So, okay, Connor, it might be your setup. Alright, so I want to turn a series of beads. And they're not going to be the same size. So I'm going to turn, say, that guy. I'll cut that in half. We'll turn it that guy. And I'll cut that in half. Turn that guy. I can do all of those with the skew. We'll do it with the short point. So I start my cut. Bring it up. There's that side of the bead. Start the cut. Up. Bring the handle up. Up. I'm going to start over because I apparently am having some issues here. So we'll leave that line. I'll work my way the other direction. Double that. Double that. Something like that there. That's probably a little bit more than double, but that's okay. So I've got a very, very tight bead here. I'm not going to start up in the center. I'm going to start way down towards the point. And with new turners, when you're turning a bead, we'll work on this guy. When you start learning to turn beads, it's a really nice idea to start with the point and follow that point all the way down. Boy, I've gotten out of that habit. But yeah, that was a skate. I want to follow that point. Oh, there we go. Follow that point all the way down. I will normally start on the cutting edge, but I will still follow that cutting edge where it's coming over. It's coming over right there. I will keep that spot in contact with the wood all the way down. I will follow that spot all the way down on a bead. Now you can use the points a lot if you want to get into a very, very accurate cut. You need to make a very accurate cut and a very accurate starting point. You're going to want to use your points for that, and I'll show you that here in a second. First, I want to turn these beads. We're going to do it with a radius skew. I'll start way down on the tool. This is going to be my end cut, my end position. I'm starting way down on the tool. Got the cut started, going right into that line. Start way down on the tool. I'm almost on the point, actually. There's that bead. Now I'll go start this bead. Get that side going. Get this side going. There's that bead. Since I'm already here, I'll start this side. Get right into there. Get that bead. So we have a 1/16, an H, and basically a 1/4 of an inch bead. Doesn't matter what size skew you use. Well, okay, that's not true. It does matter. You don't want to use a small tool on a larger piece of material. The reason for that is, one, it's harder to get to the sweet spot, wherever that sweet spot is on the tool. I need to hone this, by the way. Two, it's harder to see. And three, there's a lot more danger of getting a catch on a larger piece of material with a small tool. It still can be done. This is more, I would say this is more an advanced process too. Let me hone this guy up. Oh, still a little bit of a burr there. Dave does not want a burr. So on a smaller diameter piece, even say a 1/4 inch, I could use a 1/4 inch skew, or I could use a large skew. Doesn't matter. I probably wouldn't go to an 1.5 inch or whatever like that. But if you only have one size skew, I mean, you do have to work within the diameters that is safe to work with that skew. With this skew, let's just turn that guy. So already, I've got, if I'm going to use less than half of that, this is a 1/4 inch, that gives me an 1/8 of an inch to look at and follow down. Now, I'm using the short point. I don't know that you can see this overhead. I'm going to bring this light over. How close that point is to the material. That long point is very, very close. The wider the diameter of the piece, the more that would want to come in contact, and we don't want them to come in contact at the same time as the other point. So in this case, I would normally, if I'm using the 1/4 inch skew on a larger piece of material, I'll use a long point and turn the bead that way. That way, this point, the short point, is further away from the material. Let's go ahead and just turn this guy into a bead just for fun. Let me get my stuff set. I'm already lower on the piece than a larger skew. I'm skirting the edges of catch territory, but I've had lots of practice with it. You want to size your tools to the material that you're working with, so it doesn't make sense to use a 1/4 inch gouge on an 8, 10, 12, larger piece. It doesn't make any sense. Unless you're making very, very, very tiny detail cuts that, go away, fly, go on, that require something like that. But even those finer detail cuts often can be done with a larger tool. Okay, so that was with a radius skew. We're now going to go and do the same thing with a straight edge. We'll get about a 1/16, and we'll double that, and we'll double that-ish, something like that. I'm already on this side, so I'm going to start here. Bring my tool up. I got out of the cut. I'm going to pick it up again. Finish this bead. In theory, since I'm on this side already, I gotta go lower down on the tool. Same thing here, a little bit lower down on the tool. More toward the point to pick up the cut. And then this little 1/16 of an inch, I'm almost using nothing but the point. I can clean those up, but I'm not worried about it. That's just a demonstration there. I got all fuzzed up and got a bad cut there. It didn't get any better, but I finished the bead and then walked away from it. But it doesn't matter what type of skew you use. You can do the same thing with either one. I want to get my hands on one of Richard Raffin's round profile, round nose skews. I think that would be awesome to try out. I had considered turning my negative rake scraper into that, but I've already gotten a lot of material on the negative rake side removed, so this would not make a good skew any longer. But I might get another piece of this steel and make one. This would be a little bit less expensive than, say, getting some Thompson steel or something like that. So I'm going to put this away. Way over here on the other side of the shop. Not that far. Not that far. Stop complaining. Ooh, it's dark out. What time is it? Only 9:30? Wow, I'm moving right along. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm going to get a larger piece of material up here. We're going to do some fun shit. Wait a minute, it was already fun. Who am I kidding? All right, so piece of material. It is not round. And that's not the center that I want. Pretty sure. It's close. That's the center I want, I think. No, I don't think that's right either. Alright, we'll go with that. So I want to make sure that it's secure between centers. I just want to have enough grip on these that if the tool makes contact, it doesn't stop the material. This is going to be kind of fun because I can see this piece of poplar's got some growth rings right there, so as we make that peeling cut, we'll see what happens with that. I don't use a peeling cut on punky wood because punky wood only comes off punky. It doesn't come off in shavings. I don't use a peeling cut when I've got a crack or a void because the incoming wood that hits that tool is going to catch that edge not the same way as the material that just left, because things are flexing because they're not joined together. There's no bridge or whatever if it's a void or a crack. So I don't do a peeling cut with material like that because typically it ends up in disaster or more work to clean up the cuts that you made because that crack coming around and things flexing, it's going to be at a slightly different level, and if it's lower, it's going to make more of a dead-on contact with the tool than if it's higher. It's going to miss that spot completely and then start cutting down below. So when the piece is stopped and everything stopped flexing, now you've got one piece, the one side that's thicker, like close to the crack, than the other one. And then the wall thickness starts to pick up on this side. So I don't tend to do it that way. So we're going to go right through a peel and cut. I'm just going to do it the way I like to do it. I think it's less complicated. I've got the tool. I'm off camera with that. Alright, well this is what we have, so let's try this. So I've got the tool. Come on, get lag, there we go. Alright, so I got the tool right here in my hip. I got my anchor set. My bevel's pointing the direction of travel. Just going to rest my hand on here. Push my hip forward. And back. Forward and back. Forward and back. Forward and back. tool rest is moving, and I don't like that. Now I'm not taking as deep a cut as I probably should. So I'm going to do that now. So I guess you could say it's my abs that's doing all the work, right? Bend and snap. Now clean that up. Still not round. So make a planing cut. That's now round right there. That's the diameter I need to work with, so I'll make a planing cut in the other direction. I just stayed on the same side of the tool both times. If I don't want to switch hands, I can do it this way, same thing. Anchor bevel cut. My whole body is moving the tool. So now, this is going to be a, well, let me finish rounding this out. This is going to be a great demonstration of the difference in having the cutting edge in contact and the bevel in contact. Less complicated, much more efficient way to make a peeling cut. Not quite round. That doesn't sound round either. It is right there. There we go. Move down and clean this up. So I'm keeping my blade here, the edge straight, parallel with the piece. If I turn off to one side or the other, I'm going to get ridges and angles. And I don't want ridges and angles. I just want a straight peel. Take it right off. The tool itself reacts better when you have it pointed and moving in the direction of the planing cut, peeling cut. So here I can't actually touch the tool rest. But my fingers are just below the piece. They're not touching anything. If my fingers did touch, at worst it would push me away. But again, most of the weight is on my thumb. My hand is on my thumb, which is on the tool. I'm pushing with my right hip. I'm not pushing with my arms or anything else, using the major muscles of the body. Stay on the same side of the tool. In this case, don't have to, but just demonstrating that. Not quite. There we go. Let's clean this up a bit. Oh, I just realized I should mention this a bit too. So when I say, this is a radius edge. So when I say that I want the cutting edge starting off at about 45 degrees to the material, that's nowhere near 45 degrees up there. But down here it is, and that's where my cut is started. So remember that when you're working with a radius edge, that it is the edge that you're looking at that you want to be at a starting point of about 45 degrees. Alright, so first things first, can you see that on top? Oh, you can. I'm going to get rid of this guy. What does that do for it? Oh, that helps a lot. Okay, groovy, 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 groovy. Alright, I'm going to point this guy down a little bit more. I hope that I'll be able to catch this on video, or rather that it will show up well on video. I tried it earlier today. I'm not convinced that it showed up well, but I'm going to clean this up first. Whoa, came off the tool rest. So I got to clean that up. Came off the tool rest, got to skate because my angle changed. Just clean that up. Most of it anyway. See, I got a little bit of a catch right there. Situational awareness, right? Okay, the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cut and burnish it. And what that means is I'm going to keep the bevel in constant contact with the wood. This is another cool trick or tip that you can use. You already know that you got to, if I'm doing a bead, right, that's a sharp 90-degree angle. I want to get rid of that because it's a whole lot more material when I'm making that curve. Say if the curve starts here, that is 3/8 inch of material that I've got to cut through to continue that bead around. So, straight cut. We'll take care of that really quick. We'll knock that right off. Now I don't have to worry about that mass. So I'm going to ride the bevel all the way down. Peel that away. Let's try that again. Pick up my cut there. Pick up my cut there. Pick it up again. Gotta skate. I'm trying to force it, and I just need to chill out. Let's not force it. I get in my uncomfortable position. I'm going to ride that bevel all the way down. Pick up that cut again. Bring my hand straight up to complete that curve. And make one more pass. Come on. Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to concentrate to keep that bevel in contact. There. Alright, so I don't know if you can see that, but it's burnished. It's shiny. Let's try it one more time. You know what? I'll do it this way. This way I know the bevel will stay in contact. Woo, I can feel it heat up. So what I've done is cook that wood. It's still warm. And that's the reason why I don't like riding the bevel like that. I mean, it's nice sometimes to get a, you know, if you want a burnish like that, that's all groovy. But what it does is it heats up the wood. And on some woods, if you get too much heat localized, it'll start cracking and splintering. And you don't want that. So I stay off the bevel. Now, how is that? Is that? Yeah, you can see how shiny that is in the camera. You can see the light reflecting off it right there. So I'm going to score this guy. I'm going to work down just a bit. Just knock a little bit of that corner off. And I am only going to engage the cutting edge all the way down. I'm not gonna touch the bevel. So this is my end point. There's my cutting edge. My cutting edge is in contact. Now you can see the difference in reflective between these two. This is a really nice surface. I would not need to sand that if I chose not to. Once I, I mean, I'll clean that cut up, but because I've only contacted the cutting edge, all I have done is cut that all those surface fibers off. So it's a clean, smooth cut, but it's not shiny. It's not burnished. I haven't cooked that wood. I can even feel there's a crack right there in this poplar. I can feel the roughness of it where it was heated up. So apparently poplar will occasionally do that too. So you don't want to rub the bevel necessarily. I try to stay off of it. I don't think that it is correct to say that you float the bevel or that you ride the bevel, because you don't. Where you're at is you're engaging the cutting edge. I'm on the bevel here, on the bevel, no cut. I have to rotate the cutting edge in. Now I'm off the bevel. The bevel is not touching. And that is a very smooth surface. If I was rubbing just the bevel, which we can do, let's rub that dude. Ooh, that's warm. It heats up the wood and then gives it that little shiny, burnish, right? I just don't do that. I don't have any trouble keeping the cutting edge engaged. Again, it does take practice, but I don't want to heat up the wood. I've had red cedar will do that too if it gets localized heat. But there are a lot of timbers, if they get a localized heat that's too high, they'll start to chip and crack and split. And yeah, you just don't want that. I don't want that. Okay. I want to clean up this whole section right here. So I'm pulling shavings off, going both directions. I'm not breaking any rules. Oh, that was the side of my bevel here has got a burr on it apparently. Just slightly changing the angle of the cutting edge in comparison to the material, and I can go back and forth. The other cool thing about a skew is, believe it or not, you can use it as a shear scraper. Now, I don't know that I've done this with a radius skew, but we're going to do that tonight. But I am going to do it with this guy, straight edge skew, because it's a little bit, well, I've had more experience doing this way, clearly. With a shear shear scraping cut. Whatever tool you're using, your cutting edge is almost perpendicular to the surface of the wood. Same thing can be done with a skew. I'm going straight into the wood in this case to get that shear edge to catch just on the surface of the wood. I got to move my whole body for this, and it's a light touch. And I've got a cut going. My whole body is moving the cut. You can see where it came over here, all those shavings. And that's the surface that it leaves you. It's no different than using a bowl gouge, a spindle gouge as a shear scraper. It's the same thing. So you can actually use this as a shear scraper, and you can do it on a bowl. I'm going to do it on this guy right here. I would love to go in the direction of the fibers. So I've got my shear scrape started. It's a very light touch. I have to follow the curve with the straight edge all the way down. And I can clean that up. I don't have to pick up another tool to get a shear scrape. I wish I could stop. I'm going to grab these guys. Those are the shavings that I just pulled off. Very, very thin threads. But that is a shear scrape. So, yes, you can use it as that. So now let's try it with the radius skew. I'm really curious. I don't think I've done it. I can't recall. So my hand is just resting on top of the skew. This hand is doing nothing. Other than helping me maintain how I'm holding it, is helping me maintain the angle of the skew to the surface of the workpiece. You can see these are the shavings I'm pulling off. Same thing. So it doesn't really matter, radius or otherwise. You just have to remember that with this radiused edge, where you're contacting is going to have a little bit of a belly above it. Not necessarily the point, but if you catch that little bit of a belly, sometimes you can get a skate. But these radius skews actually, like I say, in my opinion, and that's one of the reasons why I still work with the skew, is I radiused this guy, and it made things a little bit easier for me to get my feet wet, get some experience with the skew, and practice. So I'm gonna hone this guy really quick. We're gonna do another cut that you can do with a skew right out of the box. Skew right out of the box. Even if you don't sharpen it, although you should. Because when they come from the factory, they're not necessarily accurate, and the idea is that you're going to put whatever angle or bevel on it anyway. See that fly? That dude keeps coming back, man. Go away, fly. Go away. No mosquitoes, though. Still no mosquitoes. That just blows my mind. What the hell is going on in the world that we don't have mosquitoes now? They are ubiquitous. They are part of the food chain, so that means it's going to affect everything else. That's messed up. All right, right out of the box. I don't think I have a... Oh, yes, I do. I think I've got a dull skew. Or not a dull skew, but one that I haven't sharpened yet. I bet I do. Let me look in here. Let me see. What's this guy? That is a very short parting tool, which I need to get rid of. There we go. That'll work. I haven't used this guy in a long, long time. And that's because it's not as good as steel as the rest of it. This is an old Craftsman guy. Old Craftsman lathe tool. You can see that the thickness of the tool changes dramatically. And this is a skew. I want my sides parallel, thank you. I had two of these. The other one I bent when I was first learning to use a skew because I didn't know all the, all the things that you should and shouldn't do. So I haven't put an edge on this in a long, long time. It's been sitting in a drawer. I don't know. It's got a little bit of an edge on it, but right out of the box, not even sharpening it, it is a negative rake scraper. Just have to remember, this is the one time when you're using a skew that you want to be below center. It's a negative rake scraper. You need to follow the same rules as a negative rake scraper. I don't like... So let me use this guy as a negative rake scraper. He's got a good edge on it. Oh, you know what? No, never mind. No. We'll put this back on there. So it's not a bad edge. It's kind of rough, right? But that's kind of what you get with a negative rake scraper. So let's take this guy and do a shear scrape. A very light touch because I'm going directly into the wood. I'm facing the wood directly, I should say. I'm not pushing the tool forward into the wood. I'm only moving sideways. The timber is coming right over the tool at a really sheer angle. And that cleaned that. Oh man, that cleaned it up really nice. So that torn out, scrapey looking material is now cleaned up. As far as I went anyway. Here you can see the some of the sort of tear out from using a from using a scraper. I think that shows up on camera. Let's take the skew as a negative rake scraper and clean that up. Very, very light touch. I'm barely touching the surface. If I was to jam it in, that's what would happen. I don't want to jam it in. I just want to touch the surface and then move to the side. Touch the surface, move to the side. What angle works best for you, it depends on what the timber wants, man. The timber wants a more sharp angle. Let's see if this one will do it. Yeah, it wants to dig in deeper on this one. I just want to skim across the surface with that. So if I jammed it in, you get all kinds of nasty garbage, and it's a lot. I can't even imagine. I'd have to try to clean that up with the tool, or I'd spend a lot of time with a file and sandpaper. And that sucks. Who wants to do that? That's sanding. That's not turning. That's filing. That's not turning. That sucks. Okay, I need to find out what the heck is going on here. Oh, I've got a little bit too much pressure, right? Yep. A little bit too much pressure on the timber. So let's go ahead and clean that up. Stay on the same side of the tool this time just because. So that's all smooth again. Let's clean up. Let's get that surface going. Straight. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go through and review all the cuts really quick. The first one. Yeah. The first one is a peeling cut. So there's two ways to do that. It's up to you how you do it. We'll start here on the end. You want your cutting edge parallel with the piece that you're working on. You don't want it off to the side or the other unless you're trying to get around, like here. If I was trying to get around this corner, then yeah, I would want to do it that way. But I'm not trying to get around a corner, I'm trying to get down to a diameter. So my cutting edge has to be parallel to the piece that I'm working on. The handle's going to move up my body. I'm going to get that cut started, and then I got to follow that cut down. Got to follow it down by raising the handle and moving the tool slightly forward. Pull it back, lift the handle, move it slightly forward. The way I like to do it is to find where my good cutting angle is, which is right there, and then push in with my hip. Same result, but faster and cleaner. The next cut is a straight cut. One example, you can turn the straight cut into a V cut by going from one side to the other and nibbling your way down. You see that fly? I think he wants to learn to turn wood, man. That's why he's hanging out. I'm gonna just keep working my way down both sides. I've got to point whatever side I'm cutting on, that bevel has to point in the direction of travel. I can only go so deep because my tool can't fit in there anymore. So let me show you a V-cut with the short point. Same mechanics. I'm just lifting the handle. That's all I'm doing. Go back to the long point. So you can see I can get deeper with the long point than I can with the short point. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. It's not supporting anything anyway. Move on down the road, just like the Wiz. Okay, so I want to put all these things together, right? We're going to turn a spindle. So I'm going to start off with my shoulder right there. I want to open that up just a little bit on this side. Now I want to get right to line my bevel up so I get a straight cut. I want to get right to the very bottom of where that cut is. I'm not going to use the edge because once I get over here, I'm trying to get to that very, very corner. The edge is now overhanging this. I'm going to cut all that away. I don't want that. So I'm just going to use the point. And I can get right in there. Very, very accurately. Now that got me right down to the bottom. That's all I wanted there. So I now have, that's a pretty decent, I'm going to use the long point here and clean this up. That is a pretty decent shape to start with. Right down to the bottom there. Clean up just a little bit in the very, very bottom. So we're going to turn this into a sphere. So I'll score it right there. I'm going to get rid of that side, half of the V-cut. Go away, fly. I'm going to start my planing cut, and my planing cut I'm going to follow down into a curve. This is going to be my end point. I'm relaxed, I'm upright, everything's groovy. I've got to move my hand over, drop the hand a little bit, rubbing the bevel, rotate the cutting edge into contact. Move my body, lift my hand. Move my body, lift my hand. I'm going to use the long point, move my body, lift my hand. I'm in my uncomfortable spot. When I lift my hand, it naturally moves into a comfortable spot. I want to clean that bit of the sphere up. I'm going to go back to the short point. I'm catching the edge now, but now I've gotten past this guy, so it's okay. As long as I keep that cutting edge in the same spot, as I follow the curve down, everything will be groovy. I want to clean this up a little bit. I'll just go ahead and use the short point because I had it already set to go. I'm only moving my hand straight up. I'm not turning anything. Whoop, I got to skate because I contacted up too high. I'm talking at the same time. I'm kind of losing my concentration. Alright, so I want to clean this up a little bit. I just got to catch that cut, pick it up. I'm raising my handle. That's the end of my cut. That's pretty close to being a good sphere for me, but I want to clean this up, so we start again. Planing cut. Keep the cut in the same spot as you follow it down the curve. I'm lifting my handle straight up. There's my sphere. Now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in, so that is a bead. I'm going to work in a small cove. Let's see, how do I want to do that? I think what I will do is I'll round these edges off here. I'll put a cove right in there. I'm going to round this off, make a very, very tall bead right there. Raise, well, yeah, see, I caught it again. Well, we'll fix that. Raise the handle. There we go. Go back and start my cut over. Not a big deal. There's my bead. Let's clean that up just a bit. There we go. Now I want to start my cove. So I'm going to go down on one side, down on the other. Work my way to the middle. I just got to skate because I pulled off in the wrong direction. The skate is actually right here, but we're going to clean that up. Make a nice little cove here. I'm going to start taking lighter cuts and starting lower down on the tool so I can get deeper in. In a second, I will probably switch to the long point. So that's a pretty good cove. I want to go a little bit deeper. So I'm going to change to the long point. Follow that down. Same thing here. Follow that down. Whoops, long point caught over here, so we'll just clean that up with the short point. So now I'm getting into an area where I can't get this in there. I can go to a spindle gouge, or this is an advanced technique. I can cut up here. I'm still using from half out, but all the torque is coming up to this long point. I'm not gonna cut below half on this end like I normally would if I was cutting there. I want to cut up here. That gets me a lot closer in. I got my 45-degree angle. I'm cutting there, but I can get a lot closer in and a little bit deeper. This takes a lot of practice. I'm getting almost up to the very, very tip of the point there. There's the cut. That caught the point. We'll clean that up. Not paying attention. There's that cut. From this side, I don't have that constraint, so I can use whichever point I want. Use the short one. Use the long one. Here I'm going to go back to the short point and get right up on that. There we go. Clean that off. That'll be a little bit of sanding, not much. I'm going to use the long point again, but I'm going to do it this way. Clean up the bottom of that. I'll do the same thing here. You see I got a burr right here. Just cut into that wood. I'm using the very tip of the top, almost the tip of the tool up on top. I've just completed that cove. So that looks like that. Matches that depth, so we'll do that. Actually, I'm going to even go further than that. I'm going to take this guy down. We'll shave this guy down. Just a straight cut, half a V, half a V. Do the same thing over here. Half a V. Lift the handle, Dave. There you go. Get your bevel going in the right direction. There you go. I think I'll take that much off. Gee, I don't know. Should I have turned that? I want this to be a bead. Let's make a planing cut right across that surface. Very light touch. I want that to be a bead. Oh no, did I start too late? No, I did not. Just gotta follow that curve in. Same thing here. Pick that cut up again. Clean that up just a bit. Now I'm going to work my way down into that bead. I'm using the short point to get right up to it. Very accurate cut. Straighten up that wall there. There's that. Now I'm going to use the skew to make a captured ring. I'm going to use the long point to cut into the bottom in a series of, I think, well, you could call them V cuts. I'm cutting right down into here. I got to get the diameter down enough so I can get hold of that bead. I'm going to basically about the halfway point, give or take. That side's done. I got to get to this side now. How am I going to do that? Well, I got to remove material, right? Straighten this wall up. Take this down to there. That's not going to be enough room, but I'm going to start it anyway. Yep, not even close. So let's take and do a straight cut down into there. Like that. We'll slowly start peeling that away. I'm using just the point of the tool. You can tell because it's flowering and curling and rolling up instead of turning into shavings. All these little curly cues you see down here, that's because I'm using the point of the tool. So let's clean that up. Now that's gotten a little thinner than I wanted, so now I got to match it over here. Just using the long point. Oh, you can see it in the camera. Okay, so just using the long point up in there. Same thing on this side. I might be able to get through here, but I suspect I'll need to take some more material away, so I'll do that now. I appreciate the company, Fly, but you bothered me, man. Go away. Handle's getting in the way down here. Clean that up. Take the radius skew, see if that'll get me in there. There it is. There we go. So the radius skew actually even got me a little deeper. So I want to cut down into here. Whoopsie daisy, let's not do that, eh? I'm going to go back to my radius skew. Clean this up. Turn that back into the bead that I wanted. Got out of the cut. That's going to back off. Pick up the cut again. Got out of the cut. Pick it up again. There it is. There's my bead. Take the point of the tool. Cut with the point. Follow this curve down. Now I'm on the edge again. Oh, I know. Let's really cut down into there. So I can move that over. Now I have a captured bead. I'm going to round this off. If I can get to it, I might not be able to. So I think I will do it this way. Easy there, cowboy. You need to stay right where you're at. So there's a bead. There's a bead. Whoops. Put that bead back. I'm going to take this one down into there. Just like that. Peel that away. Hey, no, get back there. Back to the long point. Clean that up. Lift my handle. There we go. Let's make this another small. No, let's not make it a sphere. We're going to make it a cove. It may look like my hands are moving the tool, but they are not. They are shifting with the way the tool is moving on the surface so that I keep positive contact between myself and the tool. But I'm not turning the tool with my hands. I'm just riding that curve down with the cutting edge. I'm now cutting with the point. Right into the end there. So we'll leave that alone. So we've done a bead, cove, captured ring. We've turned on different parts of the skew. I want to clean this up. I've had to move my hand back into an uncomfortable position to get over that. I'm okay with that though. Let's round this edge off. Like that. Now I need to clean this up. There we go. What other shapes do we need to make? We did these straight cuts and the V cuts. Let's round this guy over. No, let's make that a fillet. With a negative rake scraper. Or I could do it this way with the point. I got a flat surface there. So we have this, 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 and this. What other elements should I turn? I've done that. That pretty much covers all the cuts you can make with a skew. Planing cut, peeling cut, straight cut, bead, cove, Shear scrape. We didn't do that. So we're going to shear scrape this dude. So looking at this spindle, this is in spindle orientation. The fibers that are supporting these fibers are down here. The fibers that are supporting these fibers are down here. So I have to go with the fibers. Again, it's a very light touch. I got to keep the tool square to the face of the workpiece. I went too deep there. I'm going to try going this way. Move on over there, dude. Yep, I need to go this way. Whoop. That was a big shaving from a shear scrape there. That one is too. Very, very, very light touch. So that is now shear scraped. Except for that part. We'll take care of that now. Very light touch. Alright, that is a much nicer surface. Start that right off at 220. Okay, so we've done a shear scrape, we've done a negative rig scrape, we have done a line, a bead, a cove. What other cuts we got? I think that's pretty much it, man. So this guy, this skew, the skew itself, let's go back to the overhead. NWM Marv says great. Oh, Marv says great job, Dave. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You too can get here. It's the result of a lot of practice and refusing to be intimidated, even though at first I was refusing to remain intimidated by this. My brain is telling me it's something that it's not, and that visually it looks larger than it really is. And just the tool itself just looks intimidating because it's a knife edge on a stick, right? But if you follow these basic rules and ideas, you'll have great success. And again, with a radius skew, when you are a beginner, now I'm following that point all the way down in to complete this cut. But the radius skew, come on now. I think really helps get a better handle on how the skew operates to a beginner. You don't have this great nasty straight edge. And in a lot of cases, the points are further away from the material with a radius edge than they are with a straight edge. So jump in with a radius skew. Give that a shot. Boy, that is a really, really nice cut. And that is not. This actually is not a burnish. I just got a really, really excellent cut right there. That's nice. So I can start this off at 320 actually. But I will start at 220 because of that part right there that didn't go so well. And so let's drop this guy back up here. I want to talk about safety. You should always wear whatever I mean, definitely err on the side of caution. But with with skew work, with spindle work, most of the time for me, let's change this guy. Move this. Oh, I can just move my hand over here. So most of the time when I'm working with the skew, the shavings are just going down. They're going down and away, one direction or the other. With a spindle gouge, usually that's how it is too. They're kind of going down and off and away. With a spindle gouge, well, in either case, I wear safety glasses. I'm not as worried. I'm not as worried as things. I'm not as worried about things coming up to me, bouncing off the lathe, heavy objects, stuff like that. Because when you're spindle turning, the force is going this way on a thinner piece of material, and if that piece of material breaks, it's just going to snap and fall away. On a bowl, that's a different story. You've got a much larger chunk, or a hollow form, whatever. You have a much larger chunk. Yeah, you may start off in spindle orientation where all of the grain is parallel with the ways of the lathe, and yes, that is spindle orientation, but you are talking about a much larger mass, and so that's picking up speed. If you remember your trigonometry and physics, actually, when you have a rotating circle, the center of that circle is moving around much slower than the outer edge of that circle. They have to cover the same amount of distance. The point from the center and a point from on the outside of the circle have to cover the same amount of distance. So if I go this far, you can see that this finger only has to travel a little bit. This finger has to go way over here. So that's quite a bit of travel. They have to move in the same spot. So the outside is moving a lot faster with a larger mass. So that thing will want to spin away. And that's when I feel much more comfortable wearing a face shield, especially with a piece that's punky or has a lot of voids, might have cracks in it. I feel like something might be coming off the lathe. Have a suspicion. I'm going to wear a face shield to protect my whole face. I don't wear long sleeves. I don't use gloves. Even when it's cold, I might get socks that I will cut. I'll cut the foot out of the sock and then put that over and make a thumb hole so it's going right across here. So I'll have a little bit of extra layer of protection around my hand when it's in the wintertime when it's cold out here. But I'm not wearing gloves with fingers on them. I don't want anything getting caught in this lathe. Anything that gets caught in this lathe is going to get picked up, turned around, spun around, crushed, and it doesn't care how loud you scream. Safety, safety, safety. When I'm sanding, almost all the time, sometimes I'm a bonehead, but almost all the time I'm wearing breathing protection. But stuff like that. So, I mean, safety is very, very important. This isn't an inherently dangerous proposition to undertake. We're talking about spinning a piece of material at very fast speeds and then putting a knife edge to it or a sharp edge to it. And a lot of things can happen when you're not paying attention. So practice is very, very important. Intentional practice is even more important. And the more you practice, the better you will get at that task. And the better you get at that task, the more you can open up the pathway a little bit and explore a little bit further out, a little bit further out, a little bit further out. And that's what I keep working on, because I feel like if I'm going to teach, I need to know the tools that I'm going to teach. I need to know all the things that I can know, and as much utility out of a tool that I get. This piece of tool steel was $90, just that. I made the handle for it out of a piece of beech, and now I'm going to take it out of the handle and here's my collet. At some point, I like this handle, but it's a little bit too long. Anyway, or not for this. The one with the collet's a little bit too long. I got to adjust that. So tool steel is expensive, and I don't care who you are. $90 out of my pocket is no different than $90 out of your pocket. But you know, I don't know your financial situation either. If $90 is $90, but that might be like a week's worth of food. I don't know. Maybe not nowadays. Maybe a couple of days worth of food because prices gone up so much. So anyway, it opens up. The more you practice at a task, the better you get. The more the muscle memory comes to take over. The more your mind can start exploring other things. And then you can learn about the tools a little bit more, broaden your horizons. So when I teach these things, I say, okay, this I consider to be a beginner's cut, planing cut, peeling cut, and a straight cut. That's pretty basic skew usage. But when you start getting into working with different parts of the steel, and then you start doing, longer pieces, thinner pieces, things have to change. The physics of it changes. You can use, most people when they start learning, they primarily use the short point to do all their stuff. That's not a problem, but when I get to a point where, say I don't have a grinder and I don't want to keep honing this damn thing, I'll work this until it's not sharp anymore, and then I'll do that, and then I've got this whole half to work with, and I can keep going. And then I can hone the whole thing later, or if I can find a grinder. I've been in a couple places where there is no grinder, and you got what you got. And I don't want to take away any more material than I have to when I'm sharpening, or rather redressing the edge. I can't say really sharpening. The sharpening part comes when I get rid of that burr that comes off the wheel. That's when I'm sharpening. I'm just redressing the edge, resetting it. And I only want to take off as much material as I have to. So that means that I'm going to the grinder not more often. Unless, and we're not talking about different kinds of wood and things like laminate beams that can really dull your edge. I'm not saying I'm going back to the grinder more often. I'm going back to the grinder more intentionally. Going back to the grinder more intentionally to get the angles of the tool that works for me. I don't care what this angle is. I measured it today because I've been asked. This is 25 degrees. Well, it's not quite. It's almost 25 degrees. It's right in that neighborhood. That works for me. But 20 degrees works for me too. I like 20. 20 is all right. It just gives you a little bit more of a bevel area on 20 degrees than I have on 25. You have to figure out what works best for you. But I will tell you that the blunter, the greater the angle, the blunter the tool, the less you're going to be able to make the shapes on spindle turning, and the harder it's going to be to create those spindles. So again, 20 to 25 degrees is kind of standard for most people. I like to be a little bit on the heavier side, 25 degrees. Oddly enough, that's how I keep my pocket knives, 25 degrees. Not my carpet blade, because that was ground. Those are replacement blades. I still sharpen them a couple of times because, yeah, I'm that guy. I don't want to get rid of that steel if I don't need to. So I'll sharpen them, but they run at 20 degrees. But it's a carpet knife. Handle position is very, very important. So you need your anchor on the tool rest and somewhere on your body, whatever that is. Let's turn this down. Do we still have this image? We do have this image. So I'm gonna come down here. I don't know. Let me raise this camera. That might do. So when I'm running down the piece this way, the tool, this part of the handle is not touching my body over here. My elbow is, though, and then this tool is tucked right underneath my forearm. So I have that anchor all the way through, from the tool rest through my elbow into the side of my body. So as I move my body, even though I technically don't have this touching, it's still anchored properly. I got my finger on top because that's telling me which way the tool handle is moving and keeps my hand and wrist and everything in line with the tool. And then I just got to move my body to get the cutting edge to wherever it is I want it. And in this case, if I was using a long point, my handle now is almost parallel, and I'm in perfect cutting position for this guy right here. This is a very, very comfortable way to use the skew. I know that it looks intimidating, and yes, it intimidated me in the very beginning too. but I didn't understand how to use it. I didn't understand what the heck I was going to do with it. I tried using it as a scraper. I tried using it as hollowing boxes. Kind of does that. It works as a scraper to hollow things out. It's not anywhere near as much fun as using the proper tool for that, like a box scraper. But with a skew, you can make you can make a variety of shapes. In fact, if I go back over here, I'm going to point this camera down because I'm just going to be a smart ass for a second. There we go. TC Smo, night, Dave. Hey, man, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it, man. You and Kyle, thank you very, very, very much. I'm going to put a bead right in the middle of that guy. Oh, maybe not. Okay, so I loosened up my tailstock a little bit. That got rid of that vibration, or most of it. So I'm going to put a bead right here. I'm going to score the surface fibers. And I think for this guy, I'm going to go ahead and use my radius skew. I start my cut. See, I'm already set. I just know where that's going to be because I've done it enough. I just put my hand there. So I already know where my end cut's going to be. I'm already standing here. I knew right off the bat, but it's practice, a lot of practice. I knew right to where my end point is going to be. My thumb went there automatically. I get the cut started right there. I raise my hand and bring the tool over. Okay? If I go the opposite direction, it's no different. If I stay on the same side of the tool, this is going to be my stopping point. So I start my cut. Yeah, I got to practice this bit because I'm not as good at this as I think I should be. Let's try the straight skew. I'm totally flipping up that sphere. I don't have enough pressure on that, but that pressure gives me wobble. Alright, so there's my sphere, and there's my bead. I need to clean this up, and I got wobble, so I'm going to use the point of the tool. See, I already had it set. It's already there. Get my cut started. Hey, I slipped. I came back. That side. I was off balance. Raise the handle up. Now I want to round this off. It's basically just a V cut, but I'm raising the handle as I make the cut. I want to clean this bead up. Cut too deep there. Oh well. We'll just make the bead a smaller bead and go deeper with it. There we go. I liked it. Well, that's a nice separation. I think I'll leave that there. You know what? I want it to match. Easy there, killer. I'm not contacting right. Part of it is I don't have a lot of frickin' light right here. That's as deep as that goes. That's as deep as that goes. And now I gotta clean this up again. There we go. Clean this wall up. Just like that. captured ring, and I'm not going to go any further because I got too much vibration because of that really thin piece there. All right, so that pretty much it covers a skew, and I hope that I have shown you at least some new techniques that you can do with your skew to avoid having to stop what you're doing and pick up another tool, but to get more utility out of it too. And for all of you newer turners or people who haven't worked with a skew before, hopefully I've alleviated some of the tension you feel or might feel, and some of the trepidation that you might feel with a skew. It is, I think, a very indispensable tool, and a really great one to have fun practicing with. It is for its design. It is. I mean, I don't think you can get any more perfect for spindle turning certain things with this than with a skew. You know, I mean, spindle gouges are great. I use them all the time. I use them hollow. I love using spindle gouges, and I've done spindle turning with nothing but spindle gouges. But those long coves, the long straight diameter pieces with the skew, you can get right on the money. Its design is perfect for what it is, for what it does. What it doesn't do is turn you a bowl. You cannot do a concave shape with a skew other than a cove on a spindle piece. You can't do it in a bowl. And if you're trying to do that, you're pretty much using it as a scraper tool, because that inside curve the skew doesn't work on. It works on the outside curve or on spindle orientation. But you know, I think most people probably realize that by now. But and that's why I don't use a skew for the inside of a bowl. It just doesn't work. Yeah, I think that covers it. That was, and it's nice too, because I got to talk about a couple things and actually turn a captured ring, like I was hoping to do at the wood turning club, but didn't have the time. Covered a lot of really good material there. Disappointing that it didn't get fully recorded, but here we have it tonight. And I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions or comments. I'm sure there's at least a question or two about the skew, because most people don't use it. That's probably an overgeneralization. I use it a lot, and I'm pretty sure I use it a lot more than most turners that I know. But again, it's a very, very versatile tool. I can do a lot of things with it. That you know, I mean, when I started out as a skew, it was those three cuts. It was beads, coves, and lines, right? Every once in a while, you know, I'd look over my shoulder and I use it as a scraper, because you're not supposed to use it as a scraper. At least when I learned, right? That's not what it's for. But you know, I always just like, I got to clean this little thing up, and it would just be so easy just to zap it with the edge of the skew, you know, the cutting edge of the skew, and just clean it right up in a scraper. And shortly after that is when I learned about negative rake scrapers, and I realized, holy cow, yeah, it's a negative rake scraper too. It's not going to have the burr on it unless you put it there. You can do that. Stuart Batty developed a turning style like that. He will take a skew or a long piece like that. He was using a skew when I saw him in Tennessee do this. He was talking about growing up with a dad who was a turner, and he was turning on weekends and learning how to turn, and then he started moving into production turning and stuff like that. But then he found that, you know, with the burr on the skew, and cutting with the burr is absolutely phenomenal. That's what you do with the scraper. You're cutting with the burr, at least you should be. With a skew, with a straight edge skew, you can get some really, really, really nice shavings with the burr on a skew, or any other kind of tool that's got an edge like that. I have done that. This was converted in part due to Stuart Batty, but also in part due to Rudy Lopez, who has a negative rake scraper that's sort of in the shape of a skew, but it's radiused, and it's a thicker steel, kind of like this. So I had the thicker steel, but not the equipment that they had, and I figured, well, you know what, let me just see. And I turned this into a negative rake scraper for a while, with keeping that burr on top, and phenomenal. But even a skew right out of the box, negative rake scraper. So anyway, again, I hope that I have at least inspired you to go give it a shot. But I do like to say, don't follow YouTube blindly. Do not do that. I did that. Big mistake. I had lots of issues. Most of the stuff on YouTube people do for the views, in my opinion, and so not necessarily safe as their smartest things to do. And some people don't know any better. Some people only have used certain tools. There's nothing wrong with turning an entire piece with a scraper, but a scraper is not going to be the same mechanics as a skew or a bowl gouge or a spindle gouge or a hollowing tool. It's not going to be the same mechanics. It's going to be different. And typically with scraper, you're going to have more sanding. Typically. Unless you keep that burr good, solid on top of that tool, and you're only making contact with that burr, you're gonna do more sanding than you would with a regular gouge or skew or whatever. Nothing wrong with that. But I want to inspire people to try to do find more utility out of their tools. And by doing that, they will also, by extension, become better turners. The things that I learn, I want to be able to pass on, and I want to teach. I love teaching. I think it's a blast. And being able to see lights come on, you know, when people finally get a concept or whatever, just is really exciting for me. So, always only do the things that you're comfortable with. If you don't feel that you're ever going to do a certain something, then don't force it. But there are a lot of different options with different tools. As I just showed with the skew, there's a lot more things to a skew than just beads, coves, and lines. There's a lot more to it, and things that you will discover as you go on your journey too, as well. So, I want to say thank you very much for joining me this evening. My name again is Dave Reif. I'm a wood turner. I started turning as therapy for PTSD. I found out, and that was a lot of sleepless nights that I was out here on the lathe, shutting my mind off and letting the focus of the lathe take control. Very, very meditative process. So I talk about the therapeutic aspects of turning and of art in general because it's worked for me. But a lot of hours, a lot of soul-searching hours too, actually, trying to figure out how to get these tools to work the right way. And I want to learn. I talk to everybody. I want to learn I don't care what they're turning. I really don't. I want to know what their process is, how they're getting to that point, what tools are they using, how are they using them, because I pick up little tidbits here and there and little inspirations like, well, if he can do that with that, then maybe I can do it with this, or whatever. You know, I when I take classes, I do emulate the instructor, and I make the things that they say to make in the way that they say to make them. And I get those done and out of the way so I can get to my gig. Because my gig is I got to throw my stuff into it. I have to put me into it. I'm not copying somebody else. I'm finding out where my voice is. And that's what every turner's journey is, really. I think they say that the sincerest form of flattery is... why did I get lost? You know, copying somebody. Anyway, I don't want to be somebody else. I want to be me. I want to help you be the turner that you are, not the turner that Rudy Lopez is or the turner that X is. The techniques that they teach are valuable. can go right into your toolkit. In my case, when I learn the techniques, I practice them. I practice them until I get it down to where the way they do it, and then I throw that out the window, and I do it in a way that works for my body specifically, and that means that I've got to make certain adjustments, and that's the kind of things that I like to teach. You need to learn how to do that, but the only way to learn how to do that is to start off with the basics, get the instruction, learn how to use the tools more efficiently, more correctly, I guess. I don't want to say that people are doing things wrong, because that's not necessarily the case, but maybe they're not doing things and as efficient and clean a way as they possibly could, and that's where I want to come in. I want to come in and show some of those things and say, hey man, have you tried this? Have you considered this? Let's practice this. Let me show you that. That's my gig. I'm into that. That, and I love turning. Turning is a blast. I love just making shapes come out. In my case, I often don't have a plan. Because I let the wood tell me what's happening. Maybe I'll have an idea, maybe it'll be a box or whatever, but I don't know the shape. I don't know what it's going to look like. I just go with the wood and find out what happens. That's where I'm in my happy place. I do plan the stuff a lot. Got to plan out box lids, got to plan out, like when you're doing production turns, like, I just turned a whole bunch of honey dippers, right? So I have a plan for those. And every single one of them, the main plan is carried out for each one of them. There might be little details on each honey dipper that's different, but the main plan is all the same. So I do those things because I want those all to be the same, similar. I'm not trying to copy each one to be the same, but I want them all to be similar in that the honey dipper is going to be this long, the head's going to be about that big, the end is going to have whatever on it, and then in between after that is where I get to add my little eye of detail. My little fun time. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I leave it plain. That works too. But everybody needs to find their voice. I still want to harp on finding a good turner to work with, a well-known turner, a turner who knows what the heck they're doing. If you have, you're part of your wood turning club, you can find a turner there. If you don't have a wood turning club close to you, you can contact the AAW. You can go to Aramon. You can go to John C. Campbell. What's the other one in New York? There's another one in New York. Golly, I can't remember the name of it now. But anyway, there's another. It's not just wood turning, although Aramont and John C. Campbell are not just wood turning either, but it is a woodworking. I'm going to use the word school, as in Aramont is a school, John C. Campbell is a school. It's a university or whatever I'm thinking of or an institute that I'm thinking of that's in New York, but same difference. Get competent instruction. Learn how to use the tools the right way. Once you learn to use the tools the right way, hopefully whoever has taught you has also taught you the most efficient way to use that tool. If they don't, I can help you. But you also can explore that on your own, and I implore you to do that. I really find this to be a very meditative and enjoyable process because I'm not trying to force it. I'm trying to learn how to work with the wood, how the tools work, what most utility I can get out of the tools, what can I do with the tools in the first place. I've made a lot of turned objects that never went to the light of day. I don't want to say they were mistakes or they were mess-ups or whatever, because I mean really they weren't. They were practice pieces. You're gonna do those things and make little mistakes and goof ups or whatever, if that's what you want to call it. But it's practice, and they're little practice pieces. So I might hold on to them for a while because they look kind of cool, even though they're not a saleable item, I suppose. Something that I would want to put out there and give to somebody, because I like to over-engineer things also. So when I'm turning things for people, I want to make sure it's going to last. And some of the things that I have made design changes, perhaps inadvertently, on, I still will keep those just as a reminder. Maybe not for very long. I do still have my very first turned box though, because that was a nightmare to make. and a nightmare to make because I followed YouTube guidelines, the things that I found on YouTube. Now a box is not that big a deal, but I got a lot of wheel time, and a lot of really competent instruction from some very competent turners, who I really appreciate sharing the knowledge that they have with me, that they have. So having said that, I'm going to call this a night. I don't see anything new in chat. It's close to 11 o'clock. Hopefully and I won't know until I hear from the club, but hopefully I covered everything that I did in the club demonstration that did not unfortunately get recorded. We'll send this video and this link off to the Northwest Michigan Woodturners Club and see where it goes from there. I want to thank you people that are here this evening for joining me live. I will be back tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock to 11 Eastern Standard Time, p.m. I hope you will join me. I have no idea what I'm doing tomorrow. Oh, yes, I do. I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I've got a goblet I need to turn for a fellow turner, and then I got a couple other things that I want to pick up on. So I got a lidded box I need to finish that I started last week. Two lidded boxes I started last week. I'm going to finish them tomorrow night live. So again, thank you for joining me this evening on Twitch Tuesday. I'm glad you made it. I wouldn't have missed it if I could have, if I couldn't avoid it. Yeah, that would suck, but I wouldn't have missed it. I hope you stay friendly. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks a lot, folks, for hanging out. I'll see you next time. Hopefully tomorrow night, 8 to 11, Wood Turning Wednesday, live on Twitch with Dave Reif. Good night.